All right, welcome back to another team preview. We're going over the Minnesota Vikings on this one. Make sure you guys hit the sub button, drop a like for your boy. And yes, the Minnesota Vikings going through a little bit of an overhaul. No more Kirk Cousins in this offense. Last year, the run game was atrocious with Alexander Madison. And they had their starting tight end, suffered a season-ending injury in the middle of the season. So this team, which was a good football team for the first half of the year, completely ended tanking towards the second half of the year. A lot of changes for this organization here over the offseason. Obviously, when you lose a piece like Kirk Cousins, who's been a staple in this offense, it affects everything, right? And so they had a high pick in the draft, use that to capitalize, get a quarterback this offseason. So I'm going to talk about what that means for fantasy purposes here in a second. Now, the Minnesota Vikings did two things. Not only did they draft a quarterback, they also signed a quarterback this offseason. Sam Darnold, who was the backup for the 49ers last season, spent some time with them in a role behind Brock Purdy, learning their offense. So Sam Darnold has been a journeyman so far in his career, played with the Jets, played with the Panthers, and played with the 49ers. Now expected to compete for the starting spot here on the Minnesota Vikings. Before they drafted J.J. McCarthy, they brought in Sam Darnold immediately after Kirk Cousins went to the Atlanta Falcons. So what do we do now with Sam Darnold, right? Who's never really been startable in fantasy. He's looked good at times and looked terrible at other times. And now he's in a position where if they're going to groom their young quarterback and let him sit for a while, Sam Darnold's going to have an opportunity to be somewhat fantasy relevant, right? Here in the beginning part of the season. So I'm not expecting a whole lot from Sam Darnold when it comes to fantasy. We've seen him in this role before, but this year in 2024, you might get a few good games out of Sam Darnold to start the season when you have the kind of surrounding cast that he has. I mean, you got an Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison play really well last year. Like, you have good core pieces on this team. I think that there's okay value, but this is like a deep super flex option at best. This isn't like somebody you want to think is a sneaky top 15 upside quarterback. He'll have some decent games, but this is not a player that's going to catapult you, right? We're not getting like Josh Dobbs of last year, who looked elite at times for this Minnesota Vikings team. We ain't getting that with Sam Darnold because he has to make it through the whole season as a starter, and B, play well in every start that he has. So I know it's a very fantasy friendly offense, right, under Kevin O'Connell, very fantasy friendly offense. We'll see what Sam Darnold shakes out to be, but just having Justin Jefferson automatically makes you QB2 any given week. We'll see what it looks like on a week-to-week basis. I'm not really buying Sam Darnold, even as your second QB in Superflex, unless you're getting him at the back end of like the top 25, 30 quarterbacks that are off the board. And then J.J. McCarthy. In year one, it's tough to expect a lot out of a guy that wasn't asked to do much in college at Michigan, right? Didn't even throw for 3,000 yards his senior season. They ran the football a lot under Jim Harbaugh, which, that's what Harbaugh teams do. But he's going to have a little bit of a curve, right? They're going to ask him to do more with the Vikings, especially once he becomes a starter. And this offense, it rewards accuracy. And I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be good enough to do that. I just think his upside's a little limited, right, when it comes to fantasy. So even if he gets a chance to start this year, you got to go through the rookie curve. You got to learn the offense. There's going to be a lot at stake when it comes to J.J. McCarthy. I don't see a huge ceiling. Like, we're not talking 35, 40 touchdown ceiling. We're not talking like 5,000 yard ceiling when it comes to quarterback. He's going to be around 3,800 to 4,200 yards, even when we talk about ceiling for the quarterback position. Unless he changes his game, he's throwing a little bit more downfield, which a lot of the scouts and people around the Vikings are kind of raving about his arm, his ability to throw the deep ball. So I think he's going to take some time to get into the starting lineup. We're going to see Darnold immediately early on when this team looks like they're losing football games and probably on their way to another, top 15 pick. J.J. McCarthy will get his opportunity to come in and play. So I like the pairing with Jettas. If he stays there with the team or if he gets traded is another thing, but I like the setup right now for J.J. McCarthy. I'm just not expecting him to be fantasy relevant this season or really even down the line have a lot of fantasy appeal. Team also signed Aaron Jones in the offseason from the Green Bay Packers, so division rival. Played in 11 games last year, dealt with some injuries. He had been a top 10 running back over the seasons previous to that. The 4 seasons previous to last year, he was a top 10 back. He I mean, he didn't look like a different Aaron Jones when he played well in the postseason. It was just staying on the field last year was a little bit of a problem for him. He finished as the running back 37, averaged 4.6 yards a carry. So it's not like the yards for carry weren't there. Had 600 yards in the rushing game, 230 yards in the passing game. Didn't have the touchdowns you normally are used to seeing out of Aaron Jones, but that offense was going through Jordan Love. And I think this year, for whatever quarterback comes in for the Minnesota Vikings, we get to know that they're going to lean on Aaron Jones and the run game. So as long as he plays his normal 14 to 17 games, I still think we're getting a top 20 back at floor when it comes to Aaron Jones, probably a little bit higher. And I think this is a player that should be a top 15 running back off the board. Might be a little bit of a value pick because the Vikings aren't going to be as good, but he only signed a 1-year deal, which means he's incentivized to now play well so he can get a longer-term deal from either the Vikings or another team next offseason. I like Aaron Jones. I think he'll play well. I think this is a really good landing spot for him, depending on how the quarterback situation shakes out. He'll have opportunity and probably be splitting work, which he's already accustomed to doing, as he did in Green Bay with A.J. Dillon. Ty Chandler was a name, that kind of came around midseason last year, had a chance towards the end of the year to play well. Even some breakout potential, right? A lot of people were saying, oh, there's an opportunity for him to be the starting running back as soon as this year. After he finished the season out, after Cam Akers went out, the team, could have used him. He looked good. And then Aaron Jones came in. So all that breakout potential is only there now if Aaron Jones gets hurt. I'm not expecting a whole lot from Ty Chandler, even in a complimentary role. We need to see Ty Chandler with 15 to 20 touches in order for him to be super valuable. Now, if we get that early out of this team and they decide, they're going to run the football a little bit more, maybe we're talking about Ty Chandler as a pickup, as a flex play during bye weeks. But for now, in your standard 12-team PPR leagues, Ty Chandler is probably not somebody you're going to draft, but just somebody to look out for early as waivers come up. Or if there's anything that happens this offseason when it comes to Aaron Jones and his availability. As far as receivers, we kind of know what this thing looks like now with the receiving core. It's Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. KJ Osborne is no longer in the fold as well. But Justin Jefferson, obviously one of the elite players in the game in the NFL, suffered a hamstring injury in week 5, came back in week 14, still somehow managed to crack 1,000 yards. He had 1,074 yards, 68 catches, and 5 touchdowns in only 10 games. So the pace was still there. He played with tons of different quarterbacks. And I think whether it's Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy, we can still expect elite level production out of Justin Jefferson. Now, whether that's 1,400 yards versus 1,600 yards remains to be seen. But when he plays, he gets open. He catches everything that's thrown to him, and they scheme him really well. They scheme him open really well in this passing game. So when it comes to Jefferson, I think we're still expecting the same we've always expected. It's just the ceiling might be a little bit more limited. When you have a Sam Darnold, when you have a JJ McCarthy, now we might have to expect a little bit lower ceiling-wise. Maybe we're not getting 2,000-yard Justin Jefferson. Maybe we're not getting 1,800-yard Justin Jefferson. But if we can at least get 1,500-yard plus Justin Jefferson, he's still going to be worthy of a top 4 round pick. So I think, or top 4 wide receiver pick. Now, the only receivers you're really taking above him right now, for sure, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and I'm blanking on the last one right now. Jamar Chase is also up there, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown is still up there, but for sure, Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb are the players that we have to take above Justin Jefferson right now when it comes to wide receivers. When it comes to running back, I think the only running back I'd want to take in PPR leagues over Justin Jefferson is Christian McCaffrey. That's it. Now, if you want to take Bijan, Breece Hall, I get it. But the floor is so safe with Jefferson, it doesn't even really matter the quarterback. We're just talking about the floor here. He's going to get the receptions, going to get similar yardage. We know what to expect. I think he's a safe player as long as he stays healthy. You can tell by the numbers last year. 10 games. Didn't matter if Dobbs was QB. We had, random QBs coming in towards the end of the year. 68 catches, 1,000 yards in 10 games. Know what to expect. And then Jordan Addison, wide receiver 23 on the season last year, played really well as a rookie, exceeding a lot of expectations for him. There was a lot of people who were hyped on him, but in the first half of the season, he was elite. Damn near scored every game. and that was with Kirk Cousins, obviously. Like they were taking shots, throwing downfield to him. He didn't crack 1,000 yards, which is crazy. Like I would have expected him to have cracked 1,000. He didn't. He had 70 catches, 911 yards, but really his major value, especially early on, is he was scoring pretty much every game. He had 10 touchdowns early on in the season. He was scoring at will, it seemed like. And I think that's the area we can expect regression when it comes to Jordan Addison, and for him probably to miss out on some fantasy value that he had last season. Now, with Jefferson, obviously, he's going to be the lead dog in this offense. And whether it's Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy as starting quarterback, we also have to assume that if we're expecting maybe a decrease in ceiling from Jettas, we kind of got to expect the same thing from Jordan Addison now. So while you're in your drafts, just remember that Jordan Addison is going to be in a different circumstance than he was last season. And a lot of his value that made him the wide receiver 23 last season was tied to touchdowns. He's not this big red zone guy that they're continuing to throw to. He's probably going to scale back in the touchdown area, probably in the 5 to 7 touchdown range. And he may not even see the same volume that he had last year. Careful with Jordan Addison. And then the last player I want to talk about on this team is TJ Hockenson. He's a bigger name in the fantasy community and was playing really well at times last year before he was out for the rest of the year. He may even be starting the season on PUP, but there's no timetable right now for TJ Hockenson to return. So he suffered a major ACL and MCL injury, and obviously had to go through that surgery as well. In order to see players come back, like we normally have to wait a year before they look like themselves. Tight end, fortunately, can be a little bit different because they're not the same type of explosive players that receivers are. They can rely a little bit more on their size and their frame, especially a guy like TJ Hockenson who's running a lot more, short routes. But we saw a lot of explosiveness. Like we've seen that dude run 60, 70-yard TDs in before. So I think, knowing that he's a top 5 tight end normally when he plays, consideration for the top 3, 2, even tight end 1 at times when he's playing. This is a player that maybe you draft later on. I would not be drafting the name TJ Hockenson in hopes that he comes back in week 7 and avoids PUP list or whatever. I would play it very cautious with TJ Hockenson. If you can get him at the end of your draft and stash him in an IR spot, that's what I would do. As we get more information, I'm obviously going to have to change my tune on that, just depending on what information comes back. I'm not a doctor, nor do I claim to be, nor do we know the exact date right now as of this recording when TJ Hockenson is expected to return. If, say, best case scenario, he comes back off PUP, he's already playing with a different quarterback in Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy. So he's going to have to get up to speed. It's going to take him a couple games, at least, just to get back into the flow. And if you don't have an IR spot or you're holding out, unless you're in a tight end premium league or a league where there's not a lot of available tight ends, this doesn't really seem like the year that you need to hold out for a guy like TJ Hockenson. If you can put him on IR and stash him, that's fine. But I don't think he's a must hold. The only thing is, come fantasy playoffs, he might be full speed ready to go. And now we might be getting a different version of him for fantasy playoffs. That's just a very long hold for a tight end. I'll say that. And a guy that's been, he goes through spurts where he scores. He'll have a 30-point game. And he'll have a couple games where he's like 10 points or less. So cautious with TJ Hockenson and the injury. We got to get more information as the offseason progresses. All right, guys, that does it on the Vikings. If there's any other players you want me to discuss, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.